Coastal entrepreneur, former president, CEO, Gulf Coast Business Council, and SuperTalk columnist with some great articles. It's Ashley Edwards. And Ashley, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Paul. I'm doing great, and yourself, sir?
Doing good. Here's one I wanted to start off with.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
This has been, quite frankly, a car accident in slow motion that we've seen over and building and questioning it. And, you know, as has been pointed out, Joe Biden sought this debate at this remarkably early time because he knew he was losing and he needed to change the narrative. And he did change the narrative. He sunk his campaign tonight.
Wow. Chris Matthews, Wallace. I'm Chris Wallace. I'm amazed that he actually said that. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that by all accounts and by all measures, last night's debate was an absolute unmitigated disaster for the Biden campaign of epic and potentially historic proportions. I mean, there is I think, a vast likelihood here that, you know, my children's children will see clips in 50 years talking about the debate last night and the way that it changed the trajectory of one of the most important races in American history. And so I don't think you can understate just how historic this was. And I think that is, you know, that's really evidenced by the fact that we saw something last night that is very rare in American politics, which is the people who are dependent upon to spin the debate, to declare their candidate the winner no matter what happened, were left speechless and were left almost acting as if they were having to preside over a funeral. I mean, this was something that was unprecedented in modern American political history.
It's the Dukakis, even more so than the bundle by Dukakis. You're absolutely right. I just don't understand. Well, number one, there are so many things that we don't know that don't make sense. When you hear that his team, you've heard that some of the people on his team didn't want the debate this early, but Joe Biden absolutely, positively decided he wanted to go this early. I can't figure that he would do this. Do you think there's some problems with that thought process?
Well, I think in retrospect there certainly is. I mean, look, I think the calculus for the Biden team was that they see the poll numbers. They know that they've been lagging, especially in the very important swing states. And I think it's worth kind of putting an exclamation point on that. At the end of the day, you know, we think of these presidential races in terms of what do the American people think. And, you know, look, the winner of this race in Alabama or Mississippi or California or Oregon is not really in question. I mean, at the end of the day, the outcome of this race is going to come down to a handful of moderate, undecided voters in states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia. And, you know, the people that these campaigns are trying to appeal to, frankly, probably some of the last undecided people in America. I mean, let's face it. There are not many Americans that don't know if they, you know, support Donald Trump or not, or if they support Joe Biden or not. At this point, these are not like unknown commodities. And so, you know, they're having to appeal to a group of people here who are not ideological, are not partisan, people who, you know, are more worried about kitchen table issues. And, you know, coming into the debate last night, Paul, I think the questions surrounding you know, what would happen for those types of voters were, you know, on the Trump side, number one, will he have a repeat of what we saw in the first debate in 2020? Will he be undisciplined? Will he sound radical, too aggressive, too extreme? Or conversely, you know, will he come across as disciplined, in command of the facts? And for Biden, the questions were similar. You know, would he have a performance similar to what we saw in the State of the Union this year, where he seemed vigorous and ready to really put his message out, or would you see some sort of gas, or would he appear senile? And, of course, you know, history is going to show that the latter is true. And so in many ways, you know, after the debate was over, nobody was talking about anything that Trump did or said, which was incredibly beneficial to him. So going back to your question, I think that the Biden team thought this is going to be a chance for Joe Biden to turn the race around. And I think history will show that it will turn the race around, but not in the way they wanted.
Yeah.
So in retrospect, they should have never put him out there on the debate stage knowing the type of physical and mental condition that he is in.
It was the first time when we had a president in a debate with a former president, and that was kind of unusual. But I do have to ask you something else. You've been in debates before. We have interviews every single day here. If some of them are rather contested, you want to do your homework. You want to know exactly what you're doing and where you're going with it. But if all of a sudden something comes out, and I've had interviews like this, you're expecting one thing, and all of a sudden it just totally throws you off from what you're getting out of that guest or what you're getting out of the person you're debating. I think, and I wonder, and I think we'll hear this later on from Dana Bash and also Tapper, how much they were thrown off in the early beginnings of this. Maybe 5 or 10 minutes into it, trying to say, my God, what's going on here? And I think Trump the same way. Your thoughts?
I think you're absolutely correct. Look, I'm watching the debate in real time, and I'm thinking to myself, my impression here is that this is an absolute train wreck, that this is going as badly as it could possibly go for the Biden campaign. And, of course, I'm wondering in real time, is the response from the commentators going to match what I think I'm seeing with my own eyes? And, not only did it match that, I was actually astonished at the level of Van Jones on CNN, who has been a reliable surrogate for the Biden campaign, almost immediately says, look, we've got to change horses here. This is a disaster. That's a level of intellectual honesty that you do not get out of campaign surrogates on post-debate television coverage. And so I was a bit surprised, frankly, but look, I think it comes down to Dana Bash and Jake Tapper in real time as they're watching this unfold. They have to see what's going on. They have to know. I mean, these are professional news people. They understand the way this is going to play, and so it will be interesting to see their reactions. But and on the same note, I think it was also interesting. I think a lot of people coming into the debate wondered how the post-debate story would go. Would CNN seem like they were playing gotcha to President Trump? And for the most part, the moderators were a non-story. It seemed to be a well-run, very sort of easy-flowing debate from that perspective.
Almost to the point you wonder, was that plane also? Because you don't trust these people, number one. And when they were as nice and as, well, I should say not nice, I should say they did what they were supposed to do. And that's kind of a lot of the narrative afterwards, that they played by the rules, and people were kind of shocked by that. So, Ashley, what's next now? What happens next? And I don't think you underplay the meaning behind one of the post-debate interviews that he happened to be there, Gavin Newsom. What do you think goes on next? Will it happen at the convention or before the convention?
Well, I think that there's probably a fever pitch in the West Wing of the White House right now. Look, it goes without saying, this is historical and epic in terms of the response from Democrats. Look, my old boss, Haley Barber, used to say that politics is first and foremost about winning elections. And he's absolutely right. It's not about policy. It's not about sort of all the other intricacies that we assign to it. Politics at its core is meant to put you in a position to win an election. And there are Democrats up and down the ballot here, whether it's congressional races and swing districts or tough-type Senate races, that are absolutely scared to death this morning about whether or not Joe Biden is going to provide them with the support they want.
We only got about 10 seconds. Can you hang on for a second, or do you have to go? You can hold on. Okay, one more segment with Ashley right after this. Hold on.
to impose a 10% tariff on all goods coming into the U.S. How will you ensure that that doesn't drive prices even higher?
It's not going to drive them higher. It's just going to cost countries that have been ripping us off for years, like China and many others, in all fairness to China. It's going to just force them to pay us a lot of money, reduce our deficit tremendously, and give us a lot of power for other things. But he made a statement. The only thing he was right about is I gave you the largest tax cut in history. I also gave you the largest regulation cut in history. That's why we had all the jobs. And the jobs went down, and then they bounced back, and he's taking credit for bounce back jobs. You can't do that.
Who would have thunk that this format played into Trump's hands? Ashley Edwards, one more segment here. Ashley, if Biden survives on the ballot to November and he wins, it's going to be very difficult to convince a jury in the court of public opinion that this thing wasn't tainted.
Yeah, I don't think that there's – I mean, look, anything is possible, Paul, but it seems very unlikely at this point that Biden is going to win this race. I mean, look, I think the American people aren't just saying, is this guy fit for 4 more years in the most important job in the world? They're trying to figure out at this point, can he make it another 7 months? I mean, what we saw last night was not something to be celebrated. This is the President of the United States of America. And he clearly was not in charge of his own faculty. And, and look, I've gone back and re-listened to some of his answers, and listening to them a second time, they're actually more egregious. You actually see just how much he was stumbling over his ability to have even sort of coherent thoughts. Some of these answers, just you cannot excuse it from the standpoint of a president who has sat in Camp David for a week preparing for this debate. And so, but I think your premise is absolutely correct, Paul. I mean, it is very unlikely that this is going to lead to any acceptance of an outcome here if Biden is at the top of the ticket and ends up prevailing, especially considering where the polls are likely going to go in the coming weeks.
I haven't heard the entire thing. I'm going to go back and listen to it a little bit later on today, but I did catch this one in alluding to what you said about some of the different topics here. Here was one that I agree with you.
All those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our health care system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
He's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare.
Wow. That's hard to listen to.
It is. I texted a friend of mine we were texting during the debate as soon as he ended that sentence, and I said, that's it. That's the moment. That's when Biden ended his campaign. And, it was that striking to me in real time. Look, Biden had sort of everything to gain and everything to lose last night. Had he come out last night and seemed, his old self, in command of the facts, very spry and coherent, and had Trump done a repeat of what we saw in early 2020, we would have been having a much different national conversation this morning. But history is going to show here that we weren't watching a president who was in command of his faculties last night.
I don't know about this relationship between him and his wife Jill, but and to me it's almost like, my God, this is enough. 5 years ago, just don't put him through this. So I mean that's a dynamic there that who a lot of people probably don't even want to get into it, but. So who do you think is standing in the wings? Gavin McLeod, here again, Gavin Newsom, got to stop that. Gavin Newsom he was there, and he got some face time. And because for the Democrat Party and a lot of their voters, it's style over substance, do you think he's the man?
he would seem to be the most logical person if there was a change.
Yeah.
Look, I think this would actually probably be easier for the Democrats if they had a vice president
Yes.
that polled well, but they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And they know that. They know that Kamala Harris's poll numbers and approval numbers are as bad or worse as Biden's. And so they don't have a number two there that they can easily pivot to. And so, Newsom would seem to be sort of the heir apparent. There are probably some other names that you would hear thrown in the mix. Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan. There are a few other Democrat governors out there. Pritzker from Illinois. I mean, there are a few others because governors, executives of states will always sort of get the nod. Someone like Pete Buttigieg, the Secretary of Transportation, who ran for president before and who is, very, very young and energetic. You're going to hear some of those types of names floated. But I think the real question here, Paul, is going to be, are you going to see this sort of doubling down within the Biden camp that says we have to stick with our horse here, we can still win this, which I think would be, an absolute ignorance of reality, or will you see the down ticket races and the major donors say, guys, we're not going to continue to pump money into, a sinking ship here, and we've got to switch course. And, when you listen to the sort of national the national conversation that's going on right now, especially within Democrat circles, it is completely clear the direction they're going, and the direction they're going is how do we replace Biden at the top of the ticket?
So many dynamics. Ashley Edwards is my guest for next couple of seconds here, but so many dynamics into that for all practical purposes, Ashley, we're in July. If they take a couple of more weeks, we're in the middle of July, and then we've got to go down to through August, and it speeds up from there. You got a lot of corporate people who are beginning to commit to Donald Trump, and some of that money is in his pocket now, or his column. But you can't use any of the money unless Kamala is there. You can't use the campaign chest from Joe Biden, can you? In other words, Gavin or anybody else has to start over with a zero balance.
Well, that's not necessarily the case, but I mean, there are always sort of interesting ways they can maneuver those things. But look, there's no way you can spin this. This is an unmitigated disaster for the Democrats. Because, at the end of the day, if they were going to make the decision to move on from Biden, that is something that should have been done at the end of last year.
Yes.
And so they are, what they're going to have to do here is pull off a Hail Mary in the bottom of the fourth quarter, hoping that they can find a way. And, look, frankly, they still have a shot here because Trump ultimately does have some problems with the American electorate. I mean, there are 40% of the American electorate that are going to be very comfortable in supporting Donald Trump. But, the same reason that he lost the election in 2020 is going to come into play here. There are just some people who are never going to vote for Donald Trump. But that does not necessarily mean that he can't win this race, especially when you consider how well he's performing in these swing states. And so in order to sort of arrest his momentum at this point, they're going to have to come up with a candidate who will, be able to sort of do all the things that Biden can't do right now. Indict Trump on all of the places that they don't believe that he's aligned with sort of the moderate voters who will decide the election. Tie him to extremist views, show that he's bad for the economy and for foreign policy. Biden accomplished absolutely none of those things last night.
Yeah.
And I don't know that even a guy like Gavin Newsom, the liberal governor of California, is going to be able to pull that off. How well is he going to play in rural Pennsylvania or, upstate Michigan? I mean, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to overcome.
Well, and the other thing, too, never before in our lifetimes or ever have we had, and I mentioned this the day after the election when Joe Biden beat Donald Trump. I said, well, he's going to have to perform. He's going to have to outperform Donald Trump because if Trump decides to run again, you've got 4 years of success It's not 15 generations ago or 10 generations ago. We have people who were voting then, will be voting now, that have something to compare it for against. And I think that plays into it also. Man, it's always a pleasure. It's good to talk to you. Don't be a stranger. Ashley Edwards, I thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. Good to be with you.